Be seated. The Honorable Assembly now resumed its sitting. Finish. No, we're not doing it. Huh? No. Tomorrow. Yeah. Personal explanation.
Personal explanations,
None.
obituary and other ceremonial speeches,
None.
raising of matter of privileges,
None.
government business, bills, first readings, the Anti-Corruption Amendment Bill 2018.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, may I crave your indulgence and forgive me, I ought to have raised it with you over lunch, and I didn't. But with your permission, sir, I would just wish to ask the House to recognize the tragic passing of a pioneer of the music industry in these islands, and a friend to many of us, Mr. Charles Gregory, and to note that we mourn his passing and extend our deep condolences to his wife, Olive, his sister, Angie, and the rest of the family.
Honorable Premier, I think we should stand for a minute. Please be seated. Thank you.
First readings, the Anti-Corruption Amendment Bill 2018.
The bill has been deemed to have been read a first time and is set down for a second reading.
The Cayman Islands Red Cross Bill 2018.
The bill has been deemed to have been read a first time and is set down for the second reading.
The Penal Code Amendment Bill 2018.
The bill has been deemed to have been read a first time and is set down for the second reading.
Second readings, the National Honors Award Amendment Bill 2018.
The Honorable the Honorable the Premier. The Honorable the Premier, the National Heroes Awards Amendment Bill 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the second reading of a bill entitled the National Honors Award Amendment Bill 2018.
The bill has been duly moved. Does the mover wish to speak thereto?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Granting honors is a lasting and tangible way for a country to pay tribute to those who exemplify the greatest qualities of citizenship and those whose contributions have enriched the lives of their fellow countrymen. It is difficult to imagine a system that is comparable in terms of the pleasure it gives to recipients and its cost effectiveness. Of the 195 countries in the world, only 5 do not possess an honors system, which is perhaps testament enough to the widely held confidence in such systems. It is noteworthy that in addition to the Cayman Islands, at least 2 other overseas territories, namely Turks and Caicos and Bermuda, are known to operate a local honors system. Within the wider British family, although not directly comparable, 10 of the Queen's realms operate their own national honors systems alongside the UK honors system. So, Mr. Speaker, I say this in order to establish that our own system of honors is neither novel nor unprecedented. However, Mr. Speaker, it is fair to say that our own system is in need of reform and reviving. Mr. Speaker, few can take issue with the well-meaning intent of your efforts when, as Premier of the Cayman Islands, you and your then administration sought to establish a local honor system in 2010. However, as time has revealed, and as you have personally attested, due to the positive advice offered by the UK authorities at the time, coupled with a credible desire to keep costs to an absolute minimum, the system that was introduced was not, shall I say, entirely fit for purpose. Your task, Mr. Speaker, was a most difficult one. Introducing our own national system of honors was at the time long overdue. For too long, we as a community had missed many an opportunity to recognize the significant contributions of the extraordinary and exemplary amongst us. And sadly, for many, the opportunity was forever lost, as some of the most deserving individuals were no longer with us. Therefore, it was almost by necessity that there was a desire to catch up and to correct the wrongs of the past, or I should say the omissions of the past. However, this led to a number of unintended challenges. Firstly, these well-intended actions arguably resulted in too many awards being made too quickly. It arguably led to a rather unfortunate perception being formed of a devaluation of the initial honors system. This was most unfortunate, as those recipients were each deserving and worthy. Secondly, although the design of the original order was imaginatively contemporary, nevertheless it did not work as it was intended, since the insignia was utterly incompatible with the UK insignia worn within the British realm. Compatibility with the UK system is indeed a desirous outcome, especially when a recipient may be a holder of awards from both systems. Thirdly, the quality of the insignia led to it being damaged very easily and it becoming tarnished very quickly. Accordingly, it did not do justice to the formidable reputation of the Cayman Islands and our high standards of excellence. So, Mr. Speaker, for these reasons, among others, there has been a pause for several years in the continuation of the local honors system. However, the 60th anniversary of the coat of arms in May this year provides the perfect opportunity for the government to relaunch a reinvigorated order of the Cayman Islands. It is the government's desire to get the amendments passed during this meeting of the Legislative Assembly in order to provide sufficient time to appropriately inform the public of the new system, encourage nominations for a newly formed evaluation committee, and for awards to be announced on the 1st of January next year and awarded at the next Heroes Day celebration in January 2019. Mr. Speaker, I now wish to offer some explanation regarding the amendments that are set out in the bill, which is before the House. The current law has too many different grades of awards, currently 6. The aim of this amendment is to deconstruct the current order and simplify the grades and broaden the scope in which persons may receive an award. The amendment looks to correct this so that the order will now consist of a chancellor and principal companion, which is a designation given to the premier. There will also be 3 levels of membership, namely companions, officers, and members. The amendment also addresses the administration of the order. Moving forward, the Council for the Order, which was formerly called the Committee, will consist of 5 members, namely the Chairman, the Chief Justice of the Cayman Islands or a representative appointed by him, 2 members nominated by the Premier, 1 member and 1 each nominated by the Leader of the Opposition and the Speaker, and 1 member and 1 each nominated by the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's something wrong with my notes because the number only comes to 4. If I might have a moment, Mr. Speaker, this is an important point. Right. The chairman shall be the Chief Justice or the Chief Justice's designate. This is from clause 5, Mr. Speaker. Repealing section 4 and substituting the following sections. The chairman shall be the Chief Justice or the Chief Justice designate, 2 persons designated by the Premier, 1 person designated by the Leader of the Opposition, and 1 person designated by the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly. Thank you. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the amendment formally establishes the Cabinet Secretary as the Secretary of the Order and prescribes the function of the Secretary. The benefits of this addition are that proper administrative support is identified and there is already experience in the Protocol Office for assisting with national awards. Mr. Speaker, the all-important matter of who is eligible to be admitted to the order will also be addressed in the amendment. Moving forward, citizens of the Cayman Islands and those permanently resident in the Cayman Islands are eligible to be appointed as ordinary members, whereas persons other than citizens of the Cayman Islands or permanent residents are eligible to be appointed as honorary members. It should be noted that UK citizens who live and work primarily in the UK or who are resident in a foreign country are not eligible to be admitted to the order. The Chancellor of the Order will in future have the authority to make appointments, special nominations they're called, to the various classes of the order without recourse to the Council of the Order. But, Mr. Speaker, on the advice of the Chief Justice, there is going to be a committee stage amendment which essentially proposes that if a nomination has been refused by the Council, it is not possible for the Chancellor to make a nomination of that person. In other words, you can't circumvent what the committee has decided in that way. The Chief Justice thought that was important, and I agree with him. The most important guiding principle must be that if an honor is obtained too easily, then it becomes devalued. Checks made must be rigorous and the criteria transparent. Only then can an honor be truly valued and respected. This amendment introduces annual quotas to ensure the order remains exclusive and therefore retains its value. After giving further consideration to this important guiding principle, the government, through me, will put forward a committee stage amendment to further reduce the number of annual rewards that were proposed in the original bill, so that the number of companions, which is the highest level, will be reduced from 5 to 2 per annum, the number of officers from 10 to 3, and the number of members will be set at 5, a maximum of 5. Another committee stage amendment will limit the number of special nominations by the Chancellor of the Order to an annual quota of only 1 under each level of membership. So you can't have a situation where the Premier can decide to have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 a year. Mr. Speaker, the amendment also grants a latitude to a political recipient to refuse to accept an honor award without having to give grounds. The amendment also allows the Chancellor, after consultation with the Council, to terminate the appointment of a member who is deemed to no longer be suitable to remain a member of the Order. A motto of the Order is also established by this amendment, and it is, "Determination conquers all." This was chosen because Caymanian people have been defined by their grit, courage, and ability to defy the odds. It is a most uplifting and edifying motto for a new order and its worthy recipients. Mr. Speaker, it is our desire for both future members of the Order and citizens themselves to have a better understanding of how an honor system can work and its relevance in a modern society. We will therefore embark on a public education campaign to explain how the Order works. Mr. Speaker, this is one of the lessons learned from the initial introduction of an honor system. In fairness to those who originally established the Order, we should explain that its original foundation was hampered by insufficient knowledge and preparation, and that the UK's civil servants at the time were perhaps reluctant to interfere unduly and therefore did not offer sufficient guidance over its implementation. Mr. Speaker, please now allow me to briefly describe the newly designed insignia of the Order. The badge of the Order is a stylized 5-petaled flower with the arms of the Cayman Islands within a circlet in the center. The badge is ensigned with a device which may be described as follows: between 2 wild banana orchids, or a cross azure, all issuant from a coronet, OR. Companions shall wear a blue enamel badge of the Order suspended from a ribbon worn around their neck, or in the case of ladies, worn on a bow on the left shoulder. Officers shall wear a blue enamel badge of the Order on a ribbon suspended from the left lapel of their jacket, or in the case of ladies, worn on a bow on their left shoulder. Members shall wear the badge of the Order in gold on a ribbon suspended from the left lapel of their jacket, or in the case of ladies, worn on a bow on their left shoulder. The ribbon of the Order is royal blue with thin white borders. There is a broad white stripe in the center. Mr. Speaker, allow me please to now briefly address what is perhaps the most sensitive part of this exercise. Notwithstanding some of the issues already identified, it is vitally important that current holders of the Order or esteemed original recipients are not made to feel that their award is somehow tainted or that their insignia is inferior to the newly designed version. To this end, my government will be offering to reclassify individual awards for any recipient and give the appropriate new class in exchange. There are many precedents internationally for this course of actions, not least in the UK. When the George Cross was established in 1940, recipients of the old Albert Medal and the Edward Medal were allowed to exchange their medals for the new cross. It should be noted that some did accept this exchange, but equally many chose to retain the original medal. That will also be the case here in Cayman. If some wish to retain their original medals, then they will be allowed to do so. Once these amendments come into effect, the Cabinet Office, led by the Protocol Office, will work with the new Council to contact previous recipients to ensure that they are aware of the revised regime. Mr. Speaker, in closing, let me reiterate there are many advantages in continuing with an honors system. First, it affords the government greater opportunities to give recognition to worthy citizens. Also, running in parallel with the UK honors system gives greater scope to those who are charged with ensuring that achievement and service is recognized, are recognized whenever possible. Importantly, as the nomination process would be administered locally with little oversight from Whitehall, an award in the Order of the Cayman Islands would not impinge on a person's eligibility for recognition later in their lives for an award in the UK honors system. It is for the government to decide how best the two honors systems, the UK and the Cayman Islands, can operate simultaneously. It should be noted that rules specifying use of certificates and the wearing of medals and insignia, as well as specifics on the nomination process, will be set out in regulations which can be made in the Cabinet. The efforts to revive our national system of honors would not have been possible without the expert advice of Major David Rankin Hunt, who worked in the royal household, holding numerous posts, including administrator, a position he held until retirement in 2014. In 1999, Major Rankin Hunt was appointed secretary of a working group set up by the royal household and chaired by the Earl Marshal to organize and plan for future ceremonial events. He held this appointment until his retirement. Since retirement, Major Rankin Hunt has been advising Commonwealth realms and other countries on honors and awards, and has designed and instituted honor systems and individual orders, decorations and medals for Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, St. Lucia, Tonga, Tuvalu, the Solomon Islands, and Barbados. We are indeed grateful for his expert yet practical advice throughout this process. Mr. Speaker, with this, I wish to commend the National Honors and Awards Amendment Bill 2018 to this Honorable House.
Does any other member wish to speak? The member for Newlands.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give a brief contribution to the National Honors and Awards Amendment Bill. And I want to begin by saying that I am fully in support of what this order is attempting to achieve in recognizing and rewarding Caymanians who have contributed to this country, who have been model citizens, role models, and people we look up to, people who the younger members of our society should aspire to be like. And in saying that, Mr. Speaker, I have to say that I've always supported that idea, that notion that we needed to have a system apart from those other ones that exist that are not Cayman-focused, Cayman-centric, that from time to time Caymanians will benefit from being recognized. I think it is, I agree with the Honorable Premier that it is time for us to enhance and improve this order and make it something that all of us can be proud of, all Caymanians. And I'm glad to see, Mr. Speaker, that the Honorable Premier has made some attempts to do that. I think as our country continues to develop, Mr. Speaker, we will find it more and more important to do things like this for our people. As we become more advanced, and as the Honorable Premier said earlier today, you know, as we start to try to stand on our own, it is good, and I'm glad to see that we have moved forward and that we are on par with other countries who have established similar regimes. That said, Mr. Speaker, I do have some observations and concerns, and I will try not to take too long in pointing those out. But I do recall a number of years ago, Mr. Speaker, when you were the champion of this particular law, the Honorable Premier did have concerns similar to mine in terms of the potential for the politicization of the order. And Mr. Speaker, I wish I could stand here today and say that those concerns have been addressed, but there are a number of clauses in this bill that don't fully convince me that we're addressing that potential to politicize this order. And Mr. Speaker, I want to start, if you will permit me, by reading from the Hansards of the original debate. Where the Honorable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, just to ask if,
Premier.
if the member could let us have a copy of.
I was going to see where he was going and then intervene.
Mr.
Are you
Speaker,
going to read from Hansard's?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Well, then you need to have copies.
Well,
The
Mr. Speaker,
chair and at least other members that might be concerned.
I would gladly provide copies, but the opposition doesn't have access to a printer, Mr. Speaker. So if I could get the...
You don't have a printer?
No, sir.
That must be the only thing you don't have.
Well, if the sergeant would be so kind, I can take a break and...
We would, I certainly, the chair, would prefer to have.
Okay, well... Yeah, because, Mr. Speaker, I need this copy because I have notes on it and highlighting. So if
Honorable member, you can name the page, but you can't read from it and lay it on the table then.
They can print copies there.
No. The chair rules that the member must have copies for the chair so that I can follow what the member is reading. Because, I mean, that's obvious. It would be obvious to members to understand that if a member is reading something or is pretending he's reading, I would know whether it's correct or not.
Mr. Speaker, then, if I could give the page number and the date of the debate, then I think that would be sufficient for the staff to get the copies printed.
Member is not going to read.
No, I refrain from reading until everybody, Mr. Speaker. Page 156, page 157, and potentially page 159 if time permits. And the debate took place on Monday, the 29th of June, 2010. Oh, I can continue. I just wanted to show that because that's how it looks. Oh, yes.
Before the member proceeds, are you intending to lay it on the table of the House, honorable member?
No, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to read from it.
You want to read from it,
Yes, sir.
but you're not allowed to read from it unless I have a copy.
Okay.
They can go get the copies, but in the meantime, if you... Don't waste time.
So I can continue. I will continue. If you need.
Don't waste time.
So, Mr. Speaker, may I continue?
Honorable member
without
from
reading?
Newlands.
Put this here. So, Mr. Speaker, looking at the actual bill, Clause 4 of the bill,
June 28,
4.3,
2010.
establishes that the order is administered by the Premier as Chancellor and Principal Companion of the order. Going back to my original point, Mr. Speaker, this is where the Premier and I agreed. Well, I agree with the Premier's position in 2010, where he said there was a danger of politicizing the order. In that we have an appointed chairman and the Chief Justice, whoever we're making the Premier, the Chancellor. And later on I will explain why I'm saying that that still leaves the door open for the perception. I'm not accusing anyone of politicizing it, but there's a perception which the Honorable Premier will remember he was concerned about as well. Mr. Speaker, the membership of the Council, the makeup of the membership, again, doesn't give me much assurance that that perception of politicization of the order will go away. As the Premier mentioned, Mr. Speaker, when he introduced the bill, the Premier gets to appoint 2 members to the Council. The Leader of the Opposition is going to appoint 1 person, and the Honorable Speaker will be appointed we're allowed to appoint 1. Again, I think this makes my point that this is a bit lopsided, because with the Leader of the Opposition only being able to suggest 1 person, the Speaker being appointed by the government, I would essentially say that
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I hate to interrupt the member and his flow, but he has just submitted that the Speaker is chosen by the government. that is not the case, which I'm sure he's aware of. And we really should mislead the House and the broader public in that regard. It is suggesting that your role, sir, is not an independent one.
Mr. Speaker, I think we're saying the same thing. The Speaker is appointed by the House, but the government has the majority in the House. So, okay, I was trying to shorten it so that, I didn't take up too much time, but.
Can the honorable members steer away from making anyone being able to make that even an assumption of what you're saying?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'll just get straight to the point I was trying to make then. I don't think that the Speaker of this Assembly should be appointing anyone to this council. This is not a function of Parliament. This is a function of government. And my suggestion, Mr. Speaker, would be that if we want this to be free of any criticism, of any concerns of being politicized, that the leader of the opposition be able to appoint two, and the Honorable Premier be able to appoint two. I think that would make it well balanced, and that would be the solution to remove any doubt. I'm trying to be fair, Mr. Speaker, in my suggestions, because this is not an order that we want to become tainted as it did the last time. Mr. Speaker, looking at Clause 5 of the bill, which creates a new Section 4.5 in the law. This section allows the Premier to terminate a member of the Council. Again, this comes back, Mr. Speaker, to the concerns about political influence and so forth. Why not make it so that the chair of the council have the authority to terminate, or maybe a majority vote of the membership? But again, I'm just seeing too much being injected here, giving the Premier, I think, authority, which under normal circumstances may be appropriate, but in something like this, I don't think would be appropriate. It also says, Mr. Speaker, that the Premier can revoke membership of a member of the council, and it doesn't say that he has to provide a valid reason for that. Mr. Speaker, Clause 7 establishes that only Caymanians and PR holders can be admitted to the order, and I fully, as I said earlier, support that amendment. And it ensures that non-Caymanians can be honorary members, which I think also is quite appropriate. Mr. Speaker, when I read the Hansards of the original debate on this law, I recall that my colleague, the member from East End, raised this concern when in his debate, which I would have read had I been permitted, but I don't have I don't think everyone has the Hansards yet. But from my memory, he raised quite a bit of concern with regard to non-Caymanians being recognized by the order. So I am glad to see, Mr. Speaker, that the Premier has listened to that concern and ensured that it was dealt with in this bill. I think that provision, to be honest, and I agree with the members at the time who argued against it, I think that would have been a bit of an embarrassing position to be in, having an order established to honor Caymanians and having a way built in there that non-Caymanians could have been recognized. So I'm glad to see that that has been dealt with, Mr. Speaker. These honors, Mr. Speaker, appropriately should be for our people. Mr. Speaker, Clause 8 of the bill, the Chancellor or Premier can also make appointments on his own without the Council's support. Again, Mr. Speaker, this goes back to the potential, the perception of politicizing these honors. And I recall in his debate, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Premier spoke passionately in his rejection of that possibility. And I agreed with him then, Mr. Speaker. But I see that we have not completely removed the potential in this bill. Mr. Speaker, I believe the Sergeant has the answers now. Can I wait until he distributes them? Mr. Speaker, may I continue? May I continue? Mr. Speaker, I think this is the appropriate time for me to actually read from the Hansards, with your permission. Page 156, the second column, starting with the third paragraph. And this is part of the Premier's contribution to the debate, the now Premier contribution to the debate. Starts by saying, we have to be so very careful. The Premier spoke about nation building. We have to appreciate and understand that what we are doing must be something that can withstand the test of time. Will be something that will actually add honor to the Cayman Islands and to the people of the Cayman Islands. That it is going to be something that any recipient of these honors and awards will be able to wear proudly. The great concern, and I will go into the reasons shortly, that the legislation as drafted gives me is its potential for politicization of the granting of honors and the appearance of, even if it does not become politicized, but the appearance because of the way the structure is set up. We need to understand that if these awards begin with concerns about the politicization that they are granted based on favor of the ruling party, that we will diminish the value and estimation in the minds of not only our people, but anyone else. If this is perceived as simply a means by which the party in power can curry power, can grant some form of standing or honor to persons who it believes have served well, we will diminish the standing before we even confer the first honor on the first worthy recipient. Mr. Speaker, I don't think I need to read anymore. The Honorable Premier makes my point when he contributed to the original debate on this law. And this is still my concern. And I know him well enough to know, Mr. Speaker, that when he raised these concerns, he wasn't doing it for political expediency. He wasn't doing it for political one-upmanship. He had real concerns. I am now raising those same concerns, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Premier and I when I started out as a representative in this honorable house, discussed many times doing things the right and honorable way, and always remaining above question. And I think, Mr. Speaker, that is why he did argue so passionately when this law was first debated. I don't understand, Mr. Speaker, why he feels the need to continue down the road that he initially warned this honorable legislature to avoid. I don't understand, Mr. Speaker, why he does not now continue to take the high road. These are honors, and they need to have the requisite level of prestige and honor. Doing it in this way, Mr. Speaker, reverts back to the regime that the UDP administration put in place, that this premier so passionately rejected. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Premier stated this very morning, it is time for Cayman to step out of the UK's shadow and stand up for itself. Mr. Speaker, if we are to do this under his leadership, he shall first have to consider stepping out of the shadow of some of his coalition partners and doing things his way, which I know is the right way. Mr. Speaker, he should walk tall and proud on his own ideas, which until recently I found great difficulty in criticizing. Mr. Speaker, if he is to continue to enjoy the confidence of Caymanians, he should stick to the principles and ethics that won his party the People's Mandate in 2013. I have a good friend in this legislature, Mr. Speaker, who gives me good advice. And he often tells me, do not let anyone determine your political career for you. Mr. Speaker, I know that politics dictate now that the Honorable Premier will get up and give me a good thrashing. I think I'm man enough to take the thrashing that's coming, or the corrections. Take it like a man, or go home. So I'm going to now sit down and take that thrashing. But I know the Premier, like me, often enjoys a quiet moment with a good single malt. And when he does that, he often ponders some of the pressures of political life and some of the questions that must weigh on him, much more than I would have, Mr. Speaker. And I hope that after the thrashing, when he enjoys that single malt, he will remember some of the words that I said here today and my encouragement to him to continue down his own path and reject ideas like this that set off originally to honor our people, and if we do not do them right and proper, will dishonor our people. I agree, Mr. Speaker, we need an order, a system where we honor and recognize our people. But I will encourage the government to make the necessary changes to this bill now so that we do not go down the road and bear the backlash that I saw the first time. I think I have pointed out where the changes are necessary, Mr. Speaker. And with that, I will sit down and wait for my thrashing. Thank you.
Other member wish to speak? Member from East End?
Look like you didn't want to recognize. Didn't see me, I guess. Mr. Speaker, thank you. I shall not be long.
Member,
Pardon me? Pardon me?
were you questioning me, even asking you to rise?
No, I said, obviously you didn't see me. And I said, thank you.
Okay, that's what you said?
That's what I said.
You're big enough for me to see you.
Well, you obviously was looking elsewhere. I didn't catch your eye. Mr. Speaker, be that as it may, I shall not keep you in this honorable house long, but there are a few concerns that I have on this amendment to the honors bill myself. And I am sure the Premier will recognize them when I get into them. The Premier will remember that whilst we, during our tenure in Cabinet, that was 2005 to 2009, I brought a motion to Cabinet to do away with that white tunic and the plumes, because I thought at the time that they were glaring reminders of colonialism. And I brought that with the Premier as us as members. But there were two things. At the time, it was also, I don't know if we can call it instructions to the Stuart Jack, that little short guy, to inquire of England about us creating our own award system. To his benefit, he returned in a few meetings later and said that England had agreed for the governors to no longer wear these white suits as ceremonial suits, and that, yes, we could do our own awards. At the time, the now Premier, my good friend, was responsible for those that had that constitutional responsibility. Mr. Speaker, history tells us that we did not do it. It wasn't his fault. I should point that out. It was not his fault why it was not done. It was others that he had very little control over. That's not to say that he was not upset about not getting it done. But lo and behold, we left Cabinet without it being done. In one fell swoop, we were removed from government. And another fell swoop, the UDP government arrived and put it in place. At the time, the Premier and I were very concerned about the structure thereof, because we, at the time, wanted it reduced to a very small number so that it could stand out. When you receive an honor, we knew you had contributed to this country. That is precisely what he's now trying to do. I was concerned about the politics involved in it, like he was. I was concerned that we were going to dilute it to the point where within a few years, every person in this country would have had something on their lapel. That's not to say that I did not believe that people were worthy, but the politics in it would have expanded it that much more. Precisely why, Mr. Speaker, when this government was honoring seamen, I did not want an award because I'm not worthy of that. I spent 9 years, 10 years, 9, 10 years. I'm not worthy of that. I went in a time when things were good, when you were being paid. So my contribution to the building of this country can be measured in me buying a piece of property, assisting my parents when times were tough, and contributing to that $1 million we sent to fight the Falklands, to keep the Falklands in the British realm. The rest of it was not necessarily contribution in the way that others did. So I'm not worthy of that. But certainly, we have people in this country who work very hard, who contribute to this country beyond their call of duty, silently, that is worthy of being recognized for their contribution. And at the time, Mr. Speaker, we thought, and the Premier may correct me on this, and the member from Savannah, because there's only 3 of us left here now. We thought that it would be a 2-grade order of distinction and order of merit. Premier, is that Premier? Is that how you remember it? Order of distinction, order of merit we were talking about at the time? Something like that. But tight. Mr. Speaker, one thing I have been gifted with is a good memory, and I am almost sure. Mr. Speaker, when this was developed in 2010 in that range, as I said earlier, I thought then that we were going to do too much. We need to find, because we need to find or expand the certificate and badge of honor. Of order, no? Badge of honor. We need to expand that so that that can be recognized for people who made contributions as well. But we need at least 2 that we can distinguish people who really contributed to this country, way beyond their call of duty. And I can think of people who would, right now, who would eventually get one of those 2, distinction and merit. Now, I trust the Premier has not tried to change anything in here when it comes to certificate and badge of honor. I would like, and I notice it's not. I don't know if companion and officer should not be the only 2. And then we expand the certificate and badge of honor. Because right now, the certificate and badge of honor, some years we don't even award it. Something needs to be done down there at the bottom for people who have contributed, and then there must be a distinction, separation of those who have contributed beyond their call of duty. I recognize the Premier says that we are going to commit a stage amendment to reduce the companion by 3, I believe, and the officer by 7, and then the member, I don't recall if he said by 3 or by 2. That's all well and good, but my notes that I had made on this was, suppose the amount that we are proposing here is not nominated on any given year, in any given year. We could, well, the law says the quota would be the amount listed here. I believe that somehow we need to think that over and see where those other people. We should also say in here that someone who is nominated can be nominated for the second time, or third time, or fourth time. At some stage, their nomination may get traction over all the others that has been nominated at that time, subsequently. Mr. Speaker, like my colleague from Newland said, I didn't agree with it then, and I'm not going to agree with it now. Premier should have no authority to give an award in this country. Whether it's my good friend or my good enemy, I do not support it. Whether that is in the cards or in the skies or in the heavens, that should never happen. If the Premier wants to create a Medal of Freedom or something, then feel free. But not ordinary awards for contributions made selflessly to this country. That's unfair. It should never be done. And yes, Mr. Speaker, I cannot support the appointment, again, by speakers. Speakers needs to be removed from these things. No matter what happens, it's going to be perceived as being politicized. Certainly, getting the speaker to nominate someone is not going to lessen that. Speakers should not be involved in these things. I agree with the Premier and the Leader of the Opposition. That's fine. That's fine, but not speakers. We can't take it all out and make it independent. You can't do that. But certainly speak. You thought I bring in English people, do it properly for me? Oh, we all qualify, but certain positions don't. We all qualify. And you know, I removed that white coat out of Georgetown and then plume off the head for that same reason. For that same reason. And Mr. Speaker, the Premier and I was in a little dialogue there, and he talked about removing ourselves from that grasp that has been around our neck all these years. Oh, I'm going back for that one. I promise you I goes back for that one. Because if he thinks, or anyone in this honorable house thinks, that they're more Caymanian or support Caymanian more than I do, then they have made a big mistake. Because this is all I have. Despite my many travels, it is here I came back to, it is here I will be interred. Unless they catch me out, see? Mr. Speaker, I ain't arguing with the Premier. He and I are on the same page with that one. The more we make decisions for ourselves, the better off we will be. I was the one who said, you see our glory, you don't understand our story. And that story, if it is told, it was us. Us, Mr. Speaker, who made that story. All others came afterwards to participate in the glory of that story. This is our story. And we got to keep it our story. So don't get me off on that one, Mr. Speaker. I'll like you with that one. This is our story. And as long, I would advise all of us to keep it our story. Because we must remember, Mr. Speaker, we have to pass 2 hurdles to get in here. We got to prove we Caymanian, then we got to prove our parents were Caymanian. Only in here. Only in here. All others can go to Cayman Immigration Department, get an acknowledgement letter. We have to go an extra step. This is ours. Now let's give the awards in accordance with that. We don't need nobody to come tell us how to issue awards. I'm just saying it may not be necessary. And I understand the objective here is to get the Chief Justice as chairman, show fairness, impartiality, you know, and the Speaker as well, and remove it, so to speak, from the political side of it here on both sides. And I understand that. And I appreciate where the Premier is coming from, and I can see his thought process. But I still don't believe that speakers should be involved, because we're not making it only for today. This is for generations to come. Why should we change the law again? Might be a speaker that I like. We should like them all, because they should be without bias. Mr. Speaker.
Member,
Yes.
I think I've seen some sailing close to the wind. Please continue your debate, but I think leave out those remarks.
Mr. Speaker, I never made no remarks that the Premier didn't make. He said that might be a speaker. Like I said, we should, like all speakers, we should have respect.
I think I've told you, don't repeat it.
Yeah, we should have respect for speakers.
Well, if you want to put it that way, then you can put it that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
There must be respect for speakers, the position. And I'm not saying anything that is not universal. Respect, you know. Mr. Speaker, I think if the Premier, the other issue that I picked up whilst the Premier was speaking was that he said he is going to offer to change out the medals that we have previously given. I don't know how you're going to rate those, but if you could expand on that in your response, because the Premier did say that, like in England, some were taken up, some weren't. I hope we see that here, because, as you well know, I am mindful to think that we probably have 2,000-3,000 out there now. But if you could tell us which they would be, just members or officers or companion, how would you categorize them to be able to put them into the new, under the new regime, would be an interesting, I'm sure that will prove to be an interesting exercise. So, Mr. Speaker, despite the beliefs of the Premier, I'm very much Caymanian. East End. Buck my toenail out there. Have no place to go and no time to change my accent. Thank you very much.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does the honorable member from Bordentown West?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just want to rise to give first my support to this idea, but I want for the government and other members of this honorable house to consider something. One, I'm a bit concerned with regards to the Chief Justice being a member, and I explain to the members of this house why. Is that the one thing I think that we need to also address in the law, or make it clear, is that if there are certain behaviors or a person goes on who have received an award, commit a crime or something, I think we should have an automatic mechanism in which for that award to be taken from that person. And in the event of something like that popping up, what we don't want is someone turn around and maybe suing the government or suing something or some entity for an award that they previously have that we believe that they should no longer have. So I think that's just one of the things, and maybe it's something that's dealt with in the regulations, I'm not sure. But at a minimum, I think we should have clear language. If we're going to leave the Chief Justice in, we'll have clear language in which certain type of behavior, convictions or whatever will automatically rescind the award from the person. And at least if we're going to leave the Chief Justice in, it will be clear cut and not something that he would probably, him or his court will have to rule on. So I do understand that these things do happen, but I just want to make sure, maybe it's in the law, I've read it, I didn't see it, but I just want to make sure that it is something that we are mindful of, and at a minimum is something that we address. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. That was just my contribution.
Does any other member wish to speak? The member from Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to give a short contribution in respect to the amendments to the bill in question. I too have some concerns about the position of Speaker being one of the appointees for the nominees. Mr. Speaker, the appointment by the Chief Justice as a chair, for me, would signify the person who is going to be steering the direction of the selection process. And the person who holds the position of Chief Justice is an icon for justice across the Cayman Islands. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, in respect to this discussion about potential political influence, I think it's only fitting that we accept the suggestion made by the Deputy Opposition Leader by suggesting the Premier has 2 nominations and the opposition has 2 nominations. And that their icon of justice in the Cayman Islands, the Honorable Chief Justice, will be the person who will be that tiebreaker in any event if there is to be some unseen, unfelt, unheard biases in any capacity, because the Chief Justice is that icon of true justice, and particularly with this kind of honor that we want to give to people, who else to be the tiebreaker of it all? Now, Mr. Speaker, though I know that you are an honorable man and would be able to give great nominations, I'm not sure about what the future may hold in respect to that post. Neither will I know what or whom may hold the post of the Premier of the country. And I think, based on the odds, if you divide it into 4 fractions of 5, you have the Honorable Premier having an advantage over the other 4, because you have the Premier with 2, the Opposition Leader with 1, the Speaker with 1, and the Chairman being appointed by the Chief Justice as 1 as well. So there's still an unfair advantage on behalf of the Premier of the country. Now, these awards, Mr. Speaker, in my interpretation of what we're trying to do, has nothing to do with any political sides, but a viewpoint of the masses of the country, which comes from both sides. So I would, in order for me to support this, that would be one of the amendments that I would like to see happen, and in order for me to give my full support. But besides that, I want to congratulate the government for moving forward with this. When this was brought forth to the country 2 administrations ago, it was a good thing then. I think it's a good thing now. But I think the members of the opposition has legitimate points of fear, of concerns about political influence. And like the now Premier had said in his contributions back in June of 2010, even the mere perception of political interference will devalue this whole process. And I think that having 2 votes from both the opposition and the government will fix that issue. But before I wrap up, Mr. Speaker, I want to genuinely say the opportunity that I had to work with the Premier, I know he's not a man that would want to leave something that is seen to be unfair with the honor for the Cayman Islands. And I know that he will not be able to run as the Premier again, so I know that he will do the right thing to make the amendments to allow it to be that the opposition can appoint 2, and the government can appoint 2, to make it a fair and equal balance for this country. Because though the opposition may not be the majority, but they do represent a portion of the country. And that's what true democracy is about, Mr. Speaker. So with that being said, I want to congratulate the government for continuing to nation build through these types of efforts, and I give the government my full support as long as those amendments are made. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll call on the Honorable Premier for his right of reply. Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm left over here a little bewildered, for I know not whether those on the other side are actually supporting this important amendment bill or not. What I will say to them is, if this bill doesn't pass, I hope they recognize that the status quo, which is the current law, will continue. Mr. Speaker, my friend, the member from Georgetown Central, I think, Mr. Speaker, that he remains a bit confused about the way the democratic process works. I heard him, Mr. Speaker, just now urging a certain course on behalf of the opposition. But as I look at the official program for today, which I even questioned when we were in business committee, he is neither a member of the government nor of the opposition. But there is this new political creature called an independent member. So perhaps, Mr. Speaker, I should move an amendment to this bill, so that there is provision now for the independent member, each independent member, however many there might be, to also have a role in nominating who should sit on the Honors Council. Mr. Speaker, and it is important particularly that newer members to this House understand this, and the broader public understands this. Elections have consequences. Those who win the majority become the government. Those who don't are either in the opposition or wandering somewhere in the independent wilderness. But those who have the majority are those who make the decisions on behalf of the people who have elected them. That is the way not just our system, but every democratic system I know is structured. Yes, Mr. Speaker, and I'm acknowledging because I wish him to understand. The member from Georgetown Central, there are two independent members on this side. Three. Independent in the sense they are not members of this political party. But they are members of the government. And by that, they have agreed to work together as part of the collective to govern and administer the affairs of this country for this term. The member from Georgetown Central is neither fish nor fowl. He is not a member of the government, and I have confirmed with the leader of the opposition, he's not a member of the opposition either. So that is just the point I am making. Mr. Speaker, there are a whole range of commissions and committees that underpin the administration of this country, which are structured on the basis of those councils and committees being made up of persons nominated by the Premier by the leader of the opposition, and in some instances, by the governor. The Judicial and Legal Services Commission, the Constitutional Commission, the Procurement Committee. There's a long list I could go into. All of them recognize, and this is not new just to Cayman, this is the case across democracies. All of them recognize the relative political strength of the various entities. The reason why I am Premier is because I enjoy the support of the majority of the members who were elected in May of 2017. And therefore, the office of the Premier generally enjoys the ability to appoint more members to the various commissions and committees than the leader of the opposition, because the reason why he is the leader of the opposition is because he enjoys the support of the minority of the members in the House. The independent member has no standing constitutionally in our system. There is no prohibition against it, but there is no standing in
Mr.
the
Speaker.
Constitution.
Member from Georgetown Central, if the Premier gives way, the Premier has given way.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I hate to interrupt the Premier, but just a matter of clarity. We've just recently released a beautiful diagram that I had the honor by the clerk of this court, of this House, to deliver to all the various schools. And on that diagram, it says independent member of the House. But now the Premier have gone off topic rather than focusing on the issue to focus on me about where I am in the game.
Honorable member, are you seeking clarification?
I'm seeking clarification because
Can you please ask a question then, please?
Mr. Speaker, how can the Premier say it's not constitutional if in fact we are then telling the public through our education system that I am in part of this House as an independent member?
Honorable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I am not saying his position is unconstitutional. Members can choose whatever they want in terms of where they sit and who they support. I am simply saying it has no recognized constitutional status, and therefore it does not feature, that is, independent members, in appointments to commissions or councils or anything else, because the adversarial system of government, the Westminster system of government, which we have adopted, recognizes an opposition, a government and an opposition. Sometimes the opposition is made up of 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes 10 different political entities. I'm not saying they all have to be together. I'm simply saying that an independent member enjoys no special status constitutionally, and therefore, if the member wants to be part of the appointment process, he needs to rejoin the opposition. He needs to rejoin the opposition. Mr. Speaker, under the new procurement law, this has just been handed to me. The Premier is entitled to appoint 4 or nominate 4 members to the Procurement Committee. And the Leader of the Opposition, only 1. And the Deputy Governor, 3. The National Security Council, there is 1 for the leader of the opposition gets to nominate 1, and the Premier 2. Because, Mr. Speaker, the Constitution and the various laws that we have that allow the appointments to committees and commissions recognize that the result of the democratic process entitles whoever happens to be the leader of the government to be able to have more influence over the constitution, the makeup of these various bodies, than those who are in the minority. This arrangement, Mr. Speaker, this arrangement, Mr. Speaker, suggested in the amending bill is modeled after what obtains in a number of other democratic systems where there are honored systems. And there are variations. Some, Mr. Speaker, give all the power, quite frankly, to the leader to decide not on who sits on committees, but to decide on who actually receives honors. I have consulted at length about this particular issue, and I have striven to provide a certain balance to the nomination process. I have personally asked the Chief Justice to take on the role as chairman of the committee. He did so, Mr. Speaker, only after very careful thought and consultation with his fellow judges, for he feared some of what we have heard here this afternoon, of concerns about politicization. He has written to me in terms which says he is more than satisfied that the structure that is being proposed will not expose himself or his nominee to accusations. Well, people can always accuse, accusations with any basis of politicization. Every system that I have looked at has allowed the executive some degree of latitude and opportunity to make appointments in special cases. Every system I've looked at. We have, Mr. Speaker, and Caymanians always struggle with this, and I can say this now as I enter the twilight years of my premiership. We have a problem as Caymanians in recognizing each other, because me and you grew up together. Yep. Me and you drink coffee together. Me and you'd have a beer together. We can't say, we can't acknowledge, we can't accept that Mr. Bush, who is the Speaker, should have a say in who's appointed or who's nominated to a committee. That old Alden, I grew up with him. How he expect to be able to nominate somebody to be considered for an award? We have to get past that as a people, and some of the people in this House, some of the elected members in this House, have to get past that in their own mindsets. Alden McLaughlin can only be Premier for another 2 years and 9 months. It'll be somebody else here. It won't be me. Remember that. Don't think about Alden and what you don't think about him, what you don't like about him. Don't think about the Speaker, Mr. Bush, because you don't like him. It'll be another Speaker there at some point. We need to think, Mr. Speaker, about the system we are putting in place and ask ourselves if the system that is being put in place is a system that is likely to do what we are trying to do, which is to confer honor and respect on people of this country who have made stellar contributions. Get past the personalities and the smallness and the pettiness of mind that I have heard this evening, Mr. Speaker,
Premier,
coming from the benches across.
The member from East End, you had your say. Allow the Premier to finish his debate. Honorable Premier.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for that, but he should have allowed me to finish mine. He should have done that during the constitutional talks.
Well, but this is not a constitutional talk. It's a bill. Honorable member from East End, I've kept asking you. You have sailed close enough to the wind all evening. Stop it. And this is the last time the chair will say that to you on this matter. Member from Newlands.
Mr.
Do you
Speaker,
do you are rising on a point of order?
yes, if I could find
What is the point of order?
The Premier is misrepresenting what I said. My contribution was about this honor system, this system, not about any personality in here or anybody I like or don't like. I am trying to encourage him to do the right thing and do it the way he wanted to do it. The first time he debated.
Honorable member from Newlands, you've made I think you called it a point of order. I don't think it's a point of order. Honorable Premier, please continue. Honorable Premier, we've reached the hour of 4:30. Do you want to complete your speech, then move that suspension?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the suspension of the relevant standing order in order that the business of the House may continue beyond the hour of interruption.
The question is that standing order 10-2 be suspended to enable the business of the House to continue beyond the hour of 4:30. All in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have striven, and I in particular have striven, as the Cabinet Secretary will tell you, to remove as much of the opportunity for a complaint about this bill from it. But you reach a point, Mr. Speaker, where the bill, if you emasculate it further, will become a eunuch and incapable of doing what you're trying to design it to do. Mr. Speaker, if I can explain this again, particularly for the benefit of the member from Newlands who, as he says, thinks I'm misrepresenting what he said. But, Mr. Speaker, I was blessed with the power of discernment, and you can speak all kinds of fine things around what you're trying to say, but I know where your mind is based on what you say. And I know, Mr. Speaker, when they appear on certain radio shows, they won't speak in this nice, temperate way about these proposals. Mr. Speaker, the system as it is proposed now with these amendments creates a council which will deal with the award of national honors in 3 categories: companions, officers, and members. It will also deal on occasion with medals for valor or bravery. The council is to be made up of 5 members. Its chairman will be the Chief Justice or his or her designate. Then there are 2 persons who will be nominated by the Premier or Chancellor of the Order. 1 person designated by the Leader of the Opposition, and 1 person by the Speaker. In large part, all of the nominations made by people for the conferral of the award are dealt with and determined by this council. They're not dealt with or determined by the Leader of the Opposition, the Speaker, or the Premier. In addition to that, the bill proposes that the Premier can, in certain circumstances, declare 1 person per year to be, in each category, to be a recipient of an award. None of those people can be persons who have previously been turned down by the council. Completely outside that scope. So, Mr. Speaker, the opportunity for, or the perception, which seems to be the concern of some members on the other side, that somehow the system is still too political, in my view, is without a proper basis. No honor system that I have looked at has removed the ability of the executive in certain circumstances to confer honor. Whether you look at the United States system, the UK system, the Canadian system, Barbados, Antigua, look at them all. And Mr. Speaker, and this comes back to the point where I was just getting a little bit riled. If we don't believe that the persons who hold the offices, the highest political offices in this land, and who were elected through a democratic process, are capable of and entitled to make these sorts of decisions, then who do we think should? They go fly in some specialized people from places that know better, from England, from the United States, who know better and who are somehow unaffected by any of the considerations that would be borne in mind by us, who are of this place and who represent the people of this place. That's what I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, when I was getting riled a little earlier. We have no confidence in our own selves and our own abilities to do these things, but we go on the talk shows and we rail against the UK and we rail in here. But when we have a chance to confer this ability on our own, we say, no, no, no. You know why? Because it's not me. Because it's not me. Mr. Speaker, we have to get past this small, petty way of dealing with matters like this.
Honorable Premier, the member from Georgetown Central. Are you, honorable member from Georgetown Central, are you rising on a point of order?
A point of elucidation.
Elucidation?
Yeah, he has to give
Well,
way.
it's up to the Premier to give that if he wants to do so.
I wish to help him with this.
Mr. Speaker, I want to say thank you to the Premier for allowing me to say that. I just want a matter of clarity. I don't think I said or any other member of the official opposition said that we suggest anybody from outside to be a part of this. What we were just saying was the number balance within Caymanians, because what was suggested was 2 persons being selected from the opposition. So a matter of clarity, because it's making it sound like we are...
Mr. Speaker, this is not
Honorable Premier.
elucidation. This is renewing his debate.
Yes. I'm much afraid, honorable member from Georgetown Central, that you're going back and traversing the same road you traveled before in the debate. Honorable Premier, continue, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think I have said enough when it comes to those issues. Mr. Speaker, some of the other points and concerns which have been made by some members, I take them on board fully. Nor am I trying to say that what we are proposing here is perfect. And perhaps in time to come, we may need to make some further adjustments to it. We have explained why we are trying to get this bill through now. I delayed it last time because the Chief Justice still had certain concerns, and I wanted, Mr. Speaker, if it were at all possible, to have the benefit of his of the stature of him, the man, and the judge, and of that office as part of this important process of conferring honor on our people. And we want, Mr. Speaker, to be able to get the process started, have the process properly publicized, and give people an opportunity to be educated about it, and to be able to make nominations in a timely way so that they can be considered by the council in time for the next Heroes Day. So, Mr. Speaker, I would ask members, all of whom have said they believe in what the overall objective of this exercise is, to work with us. If they do have some useful proposals for amendment at committee stage, say so. Let's see if we can accommodate them. But to the member from Georgetown Central's point, he doesn't seem to understand that the relative strength of the government and the opposition will ultimately determine and dictate how much influence the Premier and the Leader of the Opposition have over the nomination process. That's the way it is right across the full range of constitutional and legislative arrangements that we have. When you win the government, you get a certain advantage. Otherwise, everybody would be the government. You know, that's just the way it works. Mr. Speaker, I spent 7.5 years of my political life in the opposition. He just started. He just started. You think that I fell here? No, Mr. Speaker. I clawed my way up here by my fingernails sometimes. So, just be patient, Mr. Member from Georgetown Central. I'm not vexed, you know, not at all. I just get a little bit riled sometimes about some of these things. Mr. Speaker, I believe the bill is good. I believe it is good for Cayman. I believe it is good for where we are trying to take Cayman. We have a lot to celebrate. That's why we're here. 50th anniversary of the first meetings of the House here. We are new, you know, Mr. Speaker. We got our first constitution in 1959. We're going to celebrate that next year. We are new as a democracy in the grand scheme of things, and we have come far. Let's all continue to work together to celebrate how far we've come and how much further we can actually collectively take this country. As I said, Mr. Speaker, I am in the twilight years of my premiership. I now see things in a different way. And in some cases, I have a lot less patience than once I did with certain things. But in other ways, I have even more patience than I ever thought I could possibly have. Because I know that in my lifetime and in my time as an elected member, my country has marched steadily forward, sometimes faster than others. Sometimes you had to stop and camp along the way and try to regain some strength. But we have gone ever onwards, ever upwards as a country and a people. This is just one small step in us trying to build our own pride and esteem and respect for each other and for those who have contributed. That's what we're trying to do by this. Let's work together, Mr. Speaker. I urge all my colleagues in this House, let's support what is a good bill. It may not be perfect, but it is good. And it is good for Cayman, and it will be good for our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The question is that a bill entitled, "A Bill for a Law to Amend the National Honors and Awards Law 2010, Law 20 of 2010, to reform the order of the Cayman Islands and for incidental and connected purposes," be given a second reading. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, could we have a division, please?
Division, please, clerk.
The member of the East End is voting with us. He's over here.
Mr. Speaker, the Attorney General, I will advise you that.
Honorable Alden McLaughlin.
Aye.
Honorable Moses Kirkconnell. Honorable Juliana Connolly. Honorable Dwayne Seymour.
Aye.
Honorable Roy McTaggart.
Aye.
Honorable Joseph Hugh.
Aye.
Honorable Tara Rivers. Honorable Barney Bush. Captain Eugene Ebanks. Miss Barbara Connolly. Mr. David White. Mr. Austin Harris.
Aye.
Honorable Ezra Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Alva Saku.
Aye.
Mr. Kenneth Bryan. Oh. Mr. Anthony Eden.
Aye.
Mr. Christopher Saunders.
Abstain.
Mr. Arden McLean.
I was not in my seat at the time when the division was called.
One abstention, and one Bush, Kenneth Bryan, Arden McLean. Yes. The results of the division: 14 ayes, one abstention, 3 absentees. The bill gets its second reading and moves forward. Honorable Premier, are you moving the adjournment at this time?
Mr. Speaker, I will, but we think there is a discrepancy with respect to the results. As far as I've been able to be aware, there were only 2 absentees and 1 abstention.
The member from East End were in the chamber but not in his seat.
Therefore absent.
There has to be counted absent.
Fine, fine.
Yes. Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move the adjournment of this honorable House until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Before the question is put,
Mr. Speaker, I'm being advised that it is
11.
11. I move the adjournment of this honorable House until 11 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Before the question is put, honorable members, please be reminded of the welcome reception and the plaque awards to members and families of previous members this afternoon, this evening at 6 o'clock, and tomorrow morning at the admin building at 9 a.m. Members, please be advised. The question is that this House do now adjourn until 11 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday, 6th of September. All those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. The House stands adjourned until tomorrow at 11 a.m.